First of all, let me tell you a little bit about PennAg Industries. We've been around for over 130 years. Believe it or not, over 130 years ago, we represented mostly the flour and milling industry. They had problems with transportation and overregulation. So much hasn't changed in 130 years. We still have many of those issues. A full-time, full-service membership association that represents agribusiness of all types. We have 8 different councils. We represent about 100% of the hogs and chickens in Pennsylvania. We have all the agronomic inputs, fertilizers. We have a feed and grain council. We have a seed council. We have a manure haulers council, lots of manure coming from Pennsylvania. We have the final is a horse council. You throw $1 billion through slots to the horse racing industry, and suddenly you need to have a horse council, and it's created a whole group of new challenges for us. But again, we work to create and maintain. Our motto is an effective, viable, competitive environment for Pennsylvania agribusiness to grow and prosper. Just a little bit about PennAg. Who am I? Grew up in Lancaster County, largest ag, non-irrigated ag county in America, larger than 14 different states. Big ag economy, lots of livestock. Penn State graduate. Graduate for you Ohio State grads or Ohio State folks would be people who actually complete 4 or 5 years in a base curriculum. You got to get your shots in early with Ohio State. They're loaded this year. I'm a former agriculture employee in our State Department of Agriculture. Spent about 20 years there. A number of those as Deputy Secretary for the regulatory programs at the Department of Agriculture. I consider myself an advocate for agriculture. I also consider myself an environmental advocate and also an advocate for animal welfare. I spent much of this morning emailing back and forth with Paul Shapiro. Anybody know Paul Shapiro? Yeah. Someone in Paul Shapiro's organization spotted 15 dairy heifers that they thought were being inappropriately handled in Pennsylvania, and in about 20 minutes we had a state vet out to visit them and realized that farmer had just seeded his fields and kept those cattle in for a period of time so that seed can take effect. For those of you concerned about those cows, as Paul was, they're doing just fine. Their body types and what have you are all in good shape based on our veterinarian. Paul and I actually know each other pretty well. We've debated numerous times. I respect him. Don't trust him, but I respect him. And certainly being this close to Washington in the center for their money-making machine, the HSUS, we actually have a lot of dealings with him. Spent past couple weeks dealing with a case involving credit farms that turned out very well. And talk a little bit more about that. Here's what I think. This may offend some people. Agriculture is always evolving. And I believe that to be true. I think it's important to understand it is evolving, and we need to evolve with it. With proper management and an open mind towards technology and trends, I believe that the animal production practices used in America today are the best there are. And I truly believe that. I also believe that we need to always have an open mind. We need to manage the devil out of our production practices. But as of now, I'm fine with gestation stalls. I'm fine with cages. I'm fine with the way our veal is raised. I'm fine with the way our cattle are raised. And the production practices that they're in for a reason. Just a couple other things. Let's not confuse companion animals with food animals. I think that's an important one, and I'm afraid that from time to time we in agriculture get dragged into discussions about companion animals. Dogs and cats are not cattle, sheep, goats, and chickens. And the public is not going to treat them as that. I spent, as Deputy Secretary at the Department of Agriculture, the puppy mill capital of the world. I can guarantee it's not. But know all about dogs and that dynamic. When you have billionaires that don't want commercial kennels, you better take that pretty seriously and not mix them up with livestock. And last of all, pretty open about this. I'm disgusted by the insincere politics getting in the way of animal welfare. You're either serious about animal welfare or you're not. If you're using it as a fundraising tool, if you're using it as a membership drive, I think that's wrong. And I mean that from both sides. Enough said on that. Let me tell you about something that we've done. Been out front on a lot of animal welfare issues. We were the first major ag organization to host Wayne Pacelli. I'm not sure if that's good or not. We did that about 6 years ago at an animal welfare conference in Hershey. Most of the folks at that period of time, the folks that were members of mine, didn't even know who Wayne Pacelli was. They thought Wayne Pacelli was the local humane society that took care of the dogs and cats when they were strays. Like that philosophy or not, I think Nebraska did it shortly after us, but we wanted to get to know who our biggest anti-ag folks were, and he was certainly the one. But we take this, we got to know this issue pretty well. We got out on front, again, some issues that involve the HSUS involving some of our egg operations were on the forefront. Happened to get to know Paul Shapiro, beat him in a case. Proud of that. I mention that all the time when I get a chance. They had some undercover video about 10 years ago in one of our hen operations. Found a gullible humane police officer, filed charges, and eventually they lost that case. But again, got to know him. Wonder who this guy was, riding up with 6 attorneys from Washington, D.C. to defend a case in a small district justice office in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, and it was Paul Shapiro. He came up to me in Washington one day and introduced himself. I was at a AVMA meeting, and we got to know each other. But that sparked our interest in animal welfare and take it, it's a personal interest of mine. 5 years ago, we made the calculated gamble to take some of our more controversial agriculture practices to the general public. We took a sow crate and we took cage layers and we put them in front of about 400,000 people who visit our Pennsylvania Farm Show. Pennsylvania Farm Show is in January. It's our state fair in Pennsylvania. If you know, Pennsylvania mostly has the largest rural population in America, but it also is a very urban and suburban center around the Harrisburg area. We decided, and there was some griping about that on a national perspective. We really shouldn't be showing these things up close. We decided to do it anyway, and the reaction was, as some of the surveys from places like CFI told us it would be. That people just want to know where their food comes from. They want to know that it's safe. They want to know that it hasn't harmed the environment, and they want to know that it was raised humanely. And based on those first 2 projects, the first with the Pennsylvania Pork Producers Council and the second with the Pennsylvania Poultry Council, had some great reaction at our farm show, and carried on for the next 3 to 4 years doing the same thing, cage layer display and a sow litter crate. That brings us to about this time last year. Again, the vision was to show Pennsylvanians, to show the general public what's inside those steel buildings that people drive by every day. They were very similar to the one that we built by one of our contractors. Again, 400,000 visitors, 10,000 square feet. We had a 100 by 100 area. That sounds like a lot. Wasn't nearly big enough. It included an outside area with 6,400 square feet. The pole barn, you can see what it is. About 400 volunteers from the ag community who came in to stand in front of those exhibits and talk to the general public about what they saw. 168 animals, 100 different companies that anteed up to make this happen, and again, the 10 different displays. With one message. I'm not sure if this was the, threw me off a little bit. Again, go through some of these slides fairly quickly. General construction. Had an Amish crew come in and in 3 days put up that barn, shipped in 75 tons of topsoil. Talking to these equipment dealers, ended up having a red combine, a green tractor, and a blue tractor pulling a grain drill. They were a little skeptical about it at first. Now they're standing in line to come in next year to follow up. We could probably have 4 different companies do that. But again, as people got on board, there have been more and more sponsors, more and more folks that are interested in this project. Again, trying to show people what's in, what's outside our barns, what's inside our barns, give them a chance to see. The guy who set those bins, you can just tell the pride that goes into, those are within a half an inch of each other, symmetrical, unbelievable. Again, worked with folks like Tyson and Bell and Evans. If you're ever going to try a project like this, you got to be thinking about animal health concerns. We had to have all these. It was a real challenge to get birds and livestock all approved to do this. But again, an actual facility, OSB, painted just like it would be in a broiler barn here in Pennsylvania, the exact equipment, what have you. You know, turkeys, Empire Kosher was involved in this, exact replica of what one of their barns looks like. Ducks, we have a pretty big duck operation. I think the second largest duck producer, processor in Pennsylvania, Jergowitz Company, had 2 different sized ducks. People were intrigued. They just never saw what they looked like. Again, Farmer Boy Ag built these exhibits from a pork perspective. They looked like they could fly off an aircraft carrier. Pretty cool. Again, exact replicas of, for the most part, what would be inside. Pretty close to density levels. There were some issues with you know, exactly how much, you know, how many head of livestock we could get in here, but pretty close to density levels. Again, sound liver, probably the most popular exhibit at the farm show, without a doubt. Again, a very big you know, draw for the public. You know, I can't say enough about this. This was probably the exhibit that made the exhibit. Are there any more controversial issues than veal production? Dr. Aiden's here. He's on your board. They made a commitment to be there every day. This was an exhibit received very well. But I have to tell you, the number one asked question throughout this event, you will not guess what it was. We go a little farther. I'll tell you in a second. Beef, not a whole lot you can do with beef in that setting. I remember the folks from Delaware Valley College brought those calves in, and the boys wanted to get them all fluffed up and all washed up and all blown out and everything. I'm like, no, go roll them around a little bit and bring them in. We want them to look authentic. Boy, it took a couple days till we get that boy to do the right thing, but a good learning experience. Dairy, and I'll tell the story now. You know, pulling together the poultry industry is pretty easy, and pulling together the hog industry is pretty easy, and pulling together the veal industry is pretty easy. But I'll tell you what, that dairy industry, there's 74 different dairy farms in Pennsylvania, and they're all different. Everybody's got a different idea, and they started screwing together crooked 2x4s and thinking that was a dairy exhibit. This is what we ended up with, but I think it depicted it pretty well. The number one asked question throughout the week, we had one of those white dairy hutches here. Everybody knows what they look like. Obviously, everybody in Pennsylvania doesn't know what they're for because they assumed they were veal production. How horrible it is that those poor little calves are tethered in that white hutch. Probably the most healthy, humane way to raise dairy heifers. But again, the number one asked question throughout the week, and I can tell you Dr. Aiden will confirm that. Again, opening the doors, you know, a little story about the 3 most controversial issues, 3 most controversial practices. You have the cage layers, you have the veal production, you have the sound litter. Our governor came through there with literally thousands of people on that first day, and the 3 exhibits he visited and stood beside for up to an hour, I believe he spent in the exhibit looking at this, were those 3 exhibits. He obviously didn't have a problem with it. No one on his staff had a problem with it. A real testament. Again, trying to work with you know, some of the practices, tried to make this as no-till as possible. Had a local greenhouse who actually produced knee-high corn for us, knee-high soybeans in young stages. This is January, remember. A real challenge. We had 6 different cover crops to try and depict exactly what you know, a farm field. So forested buffer. We worked with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, sometimes an anti-agricultural group. They really came on board, made a lot of progress with them. They actually put a stream in here, forested buffers. You know, again, gained a great partner. Again, mission accomplished, I would say. Almost 400,000 people went through that exhibit. Overwhelmingly, the response was positive. You know, we talk about that bell curve from time to time. There's that 2% of the people we're never going to be able to convince. We might as well not waste our time trying to convince them that the practices that we are using are okay. There's the 2% of us that really believe strongly in them, and then there's that 96% in the middle. That's who we're after. And you know, we had a lot of discussion back and forth about what we should give away, what we should hand out, what our expectation was. And truly, in the end, we wanted the general public to realize that this is normal, that these cages were normal, that these farrowing crates were normal, that these production practices were normal. And that was a takeaway that we hope that the general public left with. And certainly we believe that we normalized what agriculture looks like. And had a great opportunity to engage consumers. We had the Animal Alliance come up, some of the staff come up and do some interviews, do some survey work, and really some great information that we learned from talking to a very suburban and urban general public. Again, it was a tremendous experience. Raised over $110,000. I raised a lot of money for all kinds of things. It was the easiest money I ever raised. We had 110 different sponsors who stood up and came forward. I think, in the end, there were really two audiences. There was that general public I talked about, but more than that, there was that group of folks from the ag community who really felt empowered. It was probably the most moving part of this exhibit, to have producers leave that exhibit really feeling empowered about what they do and being very proud of what they do, being able to show it off. And the result of the activity, you saw there were 5 different front page articles about this exhibit in Lancaster Farming, which is the real sort of the Bible of agriculture in media in Pennsylvania. No offense, Sally, you do a great job. But very pleased about that. Over 250 articles nationwide. This went all over the country. About 18 hours of radio and television coverage. RFD TV 4 different times visited this and did stories on it. Again, it was a great opportunity to show our modern ag practices in their state. I think maybe the most validating part of this was to have both Paul Shapiro and Nathan Runkle, Mercy for Animals, both comment on the exhibit. They credited Pennsylvania with being willing to step out, but, of course, there's always a but, that we weren't willing to show everything. We weren't willing to show castration. We weren't willing to show tail docking. We weren't willing to, we didn't have a manure pit. Someone would have been pissed if I dug a manure pit in that farm show floor. I can guarantee you that. But they even accused us of it not smelling. And for those of you who had the opportunity to visit, I can guarantee you get 9 or 10 hogs in a pretty small space. It definitely smelled. So again, it accomplished the purpose. And again, Pennsylvania is very empowered to continue this process going forward.